Government announces phased resumption of public services starting next week. In the UK, researchers trying to find out if a rare inflammatory syndrome found in severely ill children is linked to the new coronavirus. And in New Zealand, people queue for fast food as some movement restrictions are lifted.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. For the third day in a row, the city has reported no new COVID-19 infections.
Still, Chief Executive Carrie Lam is stressing it is not yet time to fully lift social distancing and quarantine measures imposed earlier to stem the spread of the new coronavirus.
The epidemic may not be entirely stable yet, as that's what WHO said a few days ago, so we must remain highly vigilant. And so that's why we cannot just relax the two categories of measures that I mentioned in one go. We have to do it gradually. And when we relax these measures, then the need arises, we may have to tighten them again.
However, the chief executive announced that public services will resume in phases next week. Meanwhile, a mandatory 14-day quarantine for those arriving from the mainland, Macau, and Taiwan has been extended for a month. But as Kena Chu reports, there are exceptions.
It's been the fifth time in 9 days that no new COVID-19 cases were reported in the city. Still, in light of the global coronavirus situation, which remains severe, authorities announced today an extension of the 14-day mandatory home quarantine required of arrivals from the mainland, Macau, and Taiwan. The home quarantine order, initially set to expire next Thursday, will remain in force until June 7th.
If that person completes the quarantine and within the next day he or she returns to Hong Kong, he or she will be given a quarantine order. But if he is able to provide a specimen, a deep throat saliva specimen, and the test result turns out to be negative, in that case, the 14 days quarantine period in Hong Kong can be shortened.
Details of the plan are still up in the air, pending discussions with health authorities on the mainland and in Macau. People such as cross-boundary students and their related service providers will be exempted from the quarantine requirement.
This is one category that we have recommended that the Education Bureau would need to look into. There is a resumption of school one day. Well, the resumption of school hasn't happened yet. But if this happened one day, then what are we going to do with these cross-border students? What are some of the necessary measures?
Also included in the exemption are business professionals.
It's not anyone who is in the business sector. It's really those traveling is considered to be in the interest of the Hong Kong economic development. Our CEDB Bureau is actually working out the details of the exemption.
Commenting on the move, Civic Party lawmaker and Dr. Kwok Ka-ki couldn't help but wonder if political pressures have weighed on the decision. That, as he raised skeptical eyebrows at the lack of standards or figures backing the plan. Kena Chu, TVB News.
The chief executive also announced that public services around town will resume in phases starting next week.
This afternoon, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department said it will gradually reopen its facilities starting on Wednesday. Sharon Tang has more.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced today that the majority of civil servants will get back to work next week. Public facilities such as museums and sports grounds will be reopened. Still, there are exceptions.
For certain organizations that have been closed, such as government schools or some performing venues of the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, because the performing venues are still closed, so for government employees involved, they cannot really resume work as normal.
Starting on Monday, public services will return to normal office hours, including registration, inquiry, and counter services. Indoor sports centres, libraries, and museums will also gradually resume operations. Members of the public welcome the decision.
The parks, courts, everything, normal public tend to use, and, bring my family out. And kids have been home a lot recently, and it'll be good to just take them out and be able to enjoy the facilities again.
The sentiment was echoed by others, but protective measures and social distancing still come first. Mr. Hong has been waiting for 3 months to play ping pong.
Safety comes first. Well, I have to see, whether I still have to put the mask on. Otherwise, I'll have to wait for another month.
Mr. Ng, meanwhile, really wants to get back to the swimming pool.
Maybe limited the numbers of the attendance. The pool is very big. You see, we swim 2 or 3 meters.
The government stressed public services will resume under a phased approach from May 4th, meaning things will still depend on the local situation amid the pandemic. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
More than 3 million people worldwide are confirmed to have been infected with COVID-19. That has led to more than 210,000 fatalities. And there are more worries as some children in the UK with no underlying health conditions have died from a rare inflammatory syndrome. Researchers are trying to find out if it's linked to the new coronavirus. Peter Caveas has details.
The fight against COVID-19 may become harder as doctors in the UK have been alerted to children severely ill with unusual symptoms.
We have become aware in the last few days of reports of severe illness in children, which might be a Kawasaki-like disease. So Kawasaki disease is a very rare inflammatory condition that occurs in children. The cause is not often known. It can be related to a number of things.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Matt Hancock announced a life assurance that'll pay out £60,000 to families of frontline healthcare workers who die of the coronavirus in the course of their work. As of Monday, Britain was one of 5 countries in the world to surpass 20,000 deaths from COVID-19. Italy registered its lowest day-to-day number of new cases since practically the first day the nation was put under lockdown. 1,739 new cases were confirmed in the 24-hour period ending Monday evening. The previous low occurred March 10th, when 77 new cases were registered. Italy also recorded 333 deaths since Sunday evening, raising its death toll to 26,977, the highest among European countries. Meanwhile, the country is trying to ease lockdown restrictions and allowing some industries to get back to work. Some 170 workers at Fincantieri's Genoa shipyard are back on the job. It's one of the companies working on the construction of the new Genoa Bridge. It replaces the Morandi Bridge, which collapsed in August 2018, killing 43 people and raising concerns about Italy's infrastructure. All but one of Germany's 16 states have made it compulsory to wear face masks on public transport and regional trains and in shops. Fines for failing to wear a face covering vary across regions and range from a verbal warning to fines of up to €5,000. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
Turning to America, after a weekend pause, U.S. President Donald Trump resumed his White House coronavirus briefings with a promise to hold China accountable. First, it was canceled. Then, hours later, the Monday White House press briefing was uncanceled. As the U.S. president took center stage in the Rose Garden, he was asked about his recent remarks that scientists should explore the injection of toxic disinfectants as a potential virus cure.
I know you said they were sarcastic.
I can't imagine why. I can't imagine why. Yeah.
Take any responsibility?
No, I don't. No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Medical experts were forced to clarify that under no circumstances should any disinfectant be injected or ingested. Trump also vowed to hold China accountable for worldwide damage caused by the coronavirus outbreak.
We are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation, because we believe it could have been stopped at the source. So we'll let you know at the appropriate time, but we are doing serious investigations.
On a conference call with state governors, Trump said they should seriously consider reopening their public schools before the end of the academic year. None of the governors on the call responded to the suggestion. Trump also promoted what he called a major expansion in testing for the virus with new guidelines. He called what the U.S. has achieved
nothing short of amazing.
In California, meanwhile, a spring heat wave lured waves of people to crowded beaches, and healthcare professionals are worried. California's governor called it an example of what not to do. Newsom said the state is weeks away from making changes to its stay-at-home orders, but only if residents practice social distancing until then. Some officials want all beaches closed for everyone over the next few weekends.
New Zealand has begun easing its strict lockdown restrictions. Around 400,000 people returned to work after the country's prime minister lowered the alert level down a notch. Some of the movement restrictions that shut down businesses were lifted, and many queued for fast food after being freed from a month-long confinement. Some took advantage of the relaxed measures to get in the water and surf. The country recorded 3 new coronavirus cases on Tuesday, bringing its total to 1,472. There have been 19 deaths. Australia's famous Bondi Beach reopened to surfers and swimmers after being closed a month ago due to crowds breaking social distancing orders. With local new infections slowing in the country, other measures are also being relaxed. New South Wales State will allow up to 2 adults to visit another person's home starting on Friday. Australia recorded just 1 new case of COVID-19 from an unknown source in the past 24 hours.
In Japan, some 300,000 of 500,000 washable, reusable masks sent to pregnant women as part of a government handout are defective. It is the latest in a string of complaints about how Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's government has dealt with the pandemic. The reports come as the head of the Japan Medical Association said it would be difficult for Tokyo to host the Olympic Games next year without an effective vaccine against the new coronavirus. Yoshitaka Yokokura also called for more coronavirus testing so health authorities can determine if the number of cases has fallen in the country. Meanwhile, more than 500 garment factories in Bangladesh have reopened. Some of the world's biggest clothing firms source their supplies from Bangladesh. While the country has allowed garment and other factories to reopen, much of the rest of the economy remains shut down. Still ahead in tonight's news. Police filed charges against 8 people in connection with a Tunmun protest last October. A businesswoman plans to initiate a private prosecution against the director of broadcasting. Welcome back to TVB News. Police have filed charges against 8 people for their alleged involvement in a protest near an operational base in Tunmun in October. Dong Yao-nye has details.
The charges are bringing attention back to protests in Tunmun over a mysterious smell in the area. On October 30, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the Taiheng operational base. They accused police of conducting tear gas tests in the area that made some nearby residents sick. Police denied the claim and arrested 52 people. All refused to enter further bail and therefore were released unconditionally. But today, police announced 8 people, 6 males and 2 females, have been charged. They said protesters destroyed public facilities and waved laser pointers during the incident. They were also found to be in possession of various weapons, including box cutters and hammers. Police said they laid charges based on further investigations and consultations with the Department of Justice. The 8 demonstrators aged between 15 to 27 are charged with multiple crimes, including possession of offensive weapons in a public place and instruments fit for unlawful purposes. The police stressed those who have been released after refusing further bail are not totally free of investigations or even further prosecutions. The case will be heard at Fanling Magistrates Court on Wednesday. Police warned that more charges may come pending further consultation with the Department of Justice. Dong Yao-nye, TVB News.
A businesswoman plans to file a private prosecution against the director of broadcasting, Lung Kao-wing, who is also the head of RTHK, over alleged misconduct in public office. Lawmaker and barrister Eunice Young, as well as solicitor Stanley Chan, represented the woman at Sha Tin Magistracy today. The applicant noted she is not satisfied with Leung's handling of 4 RTHK programs between late last year and recent months. She said she's trying to fight for justice on behalf of the general public. It's unclear whether the court will accept the case.
The Legislative Council continued to debate financial matters in the bill proposing to extend statutory maternity leave from 10 to 14 weeks. Jackie Lin has the details.
Criticism from all political parties was aimed at the administration at LegCo's manpower panel. Lawmakers pressed for more generosity from the government in prolonging maternity leave, not just in the length of time allotted, but also on the amount of pay. Under the bill, employers could reimburse 4/5 of a pregnant staff's daily salary during the extra 4 weeks of maternity leave, capped at around $37,000 a month. That's equivalent to someone with a monthly salary of $50,000. Lawmakers decried it was unfair to those above this income bracket.
If we talk about encouraging women to give birth, then there should be equal treatment. How come that you penalize younger women who earns a higher wage?
We're talking about full pay for many years, but you're holding on to the 4/5 threshold. I don't think those make sense. Does the administration has insufficient funds or resources to make it full pay?
The government wants to be prudent with taxpayer funds.
Since it involves the use of public money, we would exercise caution. If there is no cap on the reimbursement amount, then public money will be used to pay very high salary employees.
The government explained those below the wage threshold account for 95% of female employees in Hong Kong. The Labor Department says despite the stipulated cap, employers could still provide extra pay to their pregnant staff. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.